Shalom Alechem Malachei HaSharet Malachei Elyon Mimelech Malachei HaMalachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom Malachei HaShalom Malachei Elyon Mimelech Malachei HaMalachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem Shalom Aleichem Barchuni l'shalom Malachei HaShalom Malachei Elyon Mimelech Malachei HaMalachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem l'shalom Malachei HaShalom Malachei Elyon Mimelech Malachei HaMalachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem Shalom Aleichem
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
It is wonderful to virtually be together on this Shabbat as we all stay warm. Most importantly, in our homes, we are safe. Perhaps we'll call this a throwback Shabbat. Throwback to January 2021, where we are at home in our PJs, spending Shabbat next to a roaring fire with a glass of wine. So we invite you now to get your candlesticks, your wine, so that we can welcome in Shabbat together. And as these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us, as their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light. So may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light. As we welcome in the light and certainly the warmth of Shabbat and the peace as we join together, Baruch Atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
And if you have some sort of grape beverage that you can raise up at this time, I invite you to do so. And if you're able to stand, I invite you to stand as well as we join in together for the Kiddush. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kadsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila למקרא קודש זכר ליציאת מצרים כי Say l'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim. And you may be seated if you were standing. And I have the honor of sharing some words of Torah with you this evening, this Shabbat. And this Shabbat, we encounter the Israelites on the cusp of freedom. After intense negotiation and pressure, Pharaoh finally agrees to free the enslaved Israelite people. And it took no less than the deaths of every firstborn human and animal in Egypt to finally convince the Pharaoh. But sof, finally, in the end, it was time to be free. But how were these Israelites supposed to live freely when all they've ever known is a life of bondage? Rabbi Hillel Haber brings this question up in their commentary on this Torah portion. Haber asks, how will the Israelites tell their story to the future generations who were born into freedom? How will their bodies, bent by the weight of bricks and mortar, learn to move freely? And what lessons do their bodies teach us? What lessons do their bodies teach us these thousands of years later? In other words, is there really any way for future generations to completely understand the weight and the challenge of any contemporary issue in any generation? How often have Holocaust survivors declined to speak about their experience of that time, finding it impossible to put it into words? How often have veterans struggled to encapsulate the trials and terrors of their time in combat? And for the ancient Israelites, it was the story of slavery and oppression. How could they possibly convey the pain and the burden of that era to the following generation and beyond? Well, nevertheless, God commands the Israelites in this Torah portion, God commands the Israelites to speak up, to speak out, and to teach the next generation of their burdens. God says, "And you shall explain to your child on that day, it is because of what Adonai did for me when I went free from Egypt." Now, we typically hear this phrase at Pesach, at Passover, and usually when we hear this phrase, we interpret it to mean that we each must see each of ourselves as if we were slaves that were freed from Egypt. But we never really think of the actual people, that actual generation who actually were saved by God. So, what does it even mean for people to be freed from slavery? On this question, womanist theologian M. Sean Copeland writes, "Freedom from enslavement was freedom for being human. The freed people now had the possibility of taking up the responsibility of human living without restraint. In sum, that responsibility was this: to be a human subject, to be a person, to be a woman or man who consciously and intentionally, in word and deed, assumes and affirms her or his own personhood and humanity." Now, she was speaking about those people who had been enslaved in America. But in other words, the Israelites' freedom, like other peoples who have been enslaved, their freedom meant the ability to self-determine, to establish one's autonomy, to create one's own identity free from the word slave. Again, though, how was that generation supposed to describe to the next one, born into freedom, what freedom really means? How could they make it so that this next generation appreciated and understood freedom? The most of our experiences in our lives cannot be likened to slavery. Most of us have lived through so much trauma and just horror these past couple years. And we wonder, how can we ever relay that pain to the next generation, to the younger generation? COVID has changed our lives, changed society in ways we never thought possible. It's created a generation of trauma. It's really hard to even put into words how it's affected all of us. Does anyone else here, we were just talking about this, does anyone else feel like 2021 at the same time lasted an eternity and then also just like flew by in a blip? Right? Like time doesn't mean anything. So many of us have just continued to suffer. So many of us have suffered loss. So many of us have made humongous sacrifices to keep our loved ones and ourselves safe. This past week especially has reminded many of us just how different this virus is. And this Omicron variant went from a concern to shutting us down in a matter of days. Although notice, we're not really shut down. We're still here together. So God willing, most of us will get through this with as little pain and loss as possible. I know many of you at home right now have or have had COVID and are recovering. I know many of you at home right now have friends or family who are currently struggling with COVID. And one day we may even be free from COVID. And I don't say free of COVID, because it's clearly here to stay. It's not going to go away. But God willing, we'll be free from it, meaning free from worrying about it so much. I pray that'll happen. But then, what do we say? But then, how do we speak about what happened? How do we convey the years of trauma, the years of worry, the years of pain, the years of loss, the years of tension, the years of broken relationships, the years of damage? How do we possibly put into words what is currently happening to us without unintentionally diminishing it by describing it? This pandemic will be written about one day in textbooks. It'll be like learning about some other historical era. And people will look at it as a whole and have, of course, perfect hindsight. They'll say what we say now when we look back in history. Well, how could they have let that happen? Why didn't they just such and such? So nevertheless, it's our responsibility to teach, to relay what this time has meant. It'll be our responsibility to ensure it never happens again. So just like for the Israelites, it was their responsibility to answer when the new generation asked. It was their responsibility to explain what happened while oppressed in Egypt. So surely many of them wanted to avoid talking about it, but they had no choice. In order for the Israelites to live freely as this new society, they had to know where they came from. They had to understand what it meant to achieve one's freedom in order to appreciate their own freedom. May the time come sooner rather than later that we must take charge and take on the burden to describe to the next generation what freedoms, what blessings they have. May we all come through this wave of the Omicron variant healthy and stronger than ever. And just to be your rabbi for just a second, just as when we first transition to the pandemic, I urge everyone to please take extra caution. Please be safe, make good choices. Please do everything you can to ensure your health and the health of others. Shabbat Shalom. And I believe now we're going to be turning back into our Sidurim, and turning to page 138 as we welcome in Shabbat as if she were a bride for the words of Lecha Dodi. Is that correct, Rabbi?
And when we get to the last verse of Lecha Dodi on page 139, we will invite you to rise and to face a door wherever you are to welcome in that said Shabbat bride.
Lecha lecha dodi, likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabala. Lecha lecha dodi, likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabala. Lecha lecha dodi, likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabala. Shamor v'zachor b'diborecha. Hishmi'anu el ha'meyuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad L'shemo tiferet v'lihi la 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 Lecha dodi likrat kala B'nei Shabbat nekabala Lecha dodi likrat kala B'nei Shabbat nekabala Likrat Shabbat, lechu v'nelcha, ki hi makor ha'veracha, merosh mikedem nisucha, sofa aseh b'machshavat chila la 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 lecha dodi. Please rise. Penei Shabbat nekabala, lecha dodi. Likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, gam b'simcha u'v'tzola, toch emunei am segula. Boi chala. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabala. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabala. La 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 la. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabala. Lecha dodi, likrat kala. Penei Shabbat nekabela.
And we remain standing as we continue on page 146 with the Baruch Hu.
Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
This week we began a new Hebrew month. This new month, Rosh Chodesh, Shvat, The new month of winter begins as the month of Tevet ends. Tevet is the month of resting and darkness. Shvat is the month of days growing longer, but somehow also colder, January and February. When the world seems the most devoid of life, we give thanks for the future. Yes, this is the month when we tell the story of the escape from the narrow place. This is the month of Shabbat Shirah, when we sing the song of liberation. We give thanks for freedom. This is the month when we talk of wine and nuts and fruit, the new year of the trees. This is the month of Tu B'Shvat, when we eat the gifts of our planet. We give thanks to the earth, blessed oneness, outside of time eternal, blessed Hamavdil, dividing time into years and days, and every month, sharing the new moon with us. For that and so much more, we give thanks. Amen. And we turn now to words of praise to God as we join together our voices in singing Shema.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Vaed.
And as we are seated, we turn to the words of Ve'ahavta in English on page 154. You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Take to heart these instructions with which I charge you this day. Impress them upon your children. Recite them when you stay at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hand and let them serve as a symbol on your forehead. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Thus you shall remember to observe all my commandments and to be holy to your God. I am Adonai your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Adonai your God. Adonai Elohechem Emet. And as we think about this week's parashah and we look ahead toward the continuation of the story, standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together, as we join together in singing Mi Chamocha.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot, oseh peleh. Who is like you? Who is like you, Adonai? Who is like you, Adonai? When Moses and the children crossed the sea, they sang to you with songs of joy. Who is like you, Adonai? Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora
And we continue on page 160 with the words of Hashkivenu, our evening prayer for peace.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom V'hamidenu shomreinu lechayim Hashkivenu Hamidenu Shomreinu Lechayim. Spread the shelter of your peace over us. Guide us in wisdom, compassion, and trust. Hashkivenu us from hatred, sorrow, and pain. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom V'hamidenu shomreinu Hashkivenu, Hashkivenu, Adonai, Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom, V'hamidenu shomreinu
And as Rabbi Bellows talked about, our memories and the stories that we tell of the experiences in our lives. As our prayer book on page 163 reminds us, we are a people in whom the past endures, in whom the present is inconceivable without moments gone by. The Exodus lasted a moment enduring forever. What happened once upon a time happens all the time. As we turn now in our prayer books to page 164, and we rise for the Amidah.
Adonai sifatai tiftachu fi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Page 166. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu ve'imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, Ve'konei HaKol, Ve'zocher Chastei Avot Ve'imahot, U'mevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. Page 168. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. Page 170. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
You may be seated. And as we think of this new month of Shvat that we are in, a prayer, a piece of poetry by Alden Salavi called "This Prayer is a Tree." Could it be that a prayer is like a tree falling in the woods? No one needs to hear its thunderous crash for its nutrients to soak back into the earth, for its hollows to provide shelter, for it to become one with life itself. Let your prayers pour out upon the fertile ground of your heart. Let your prayers feed your aching soul. Could it be that your prayer is like a tree falling in the woods? No one needs to see it crack and tumble for it to clear space for new growth, for it to open space, letting sunlight penetrate the deep, for it to become one with life itself. And we turn in our prayer books to page 376, and we'll join together with a prayer for our country, followed by a prayer for the state of Israel. O guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing it with those who are in need. Keep our eyes open to the wonders of creation and alert to the care of the earth. May we never be lazy in the work of peace. May we honor those who have died in defense of our ideals. Grant our leaders wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion, and help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our country be sound in body and spirit. Amen. And at the bottom of the next page, O Heavenly One, protector and redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love. Spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. Amen. And now we turn our hearts and our prayers toward those in our community who are in need of healing, be it a physical, emotional healing. And if tonight you are thinking of someone who is in such need, I ask you at this time to call their name aloud and add their name, send it out into the universe. And we take all of those names into our hearts, and may God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit as we now join together in singing Mishaberach, our prayer for healing.
habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misheberach imotenu, mekor habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
And we take a moment for silent and personal prayer.
Say shalom, shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru Amen. Oseh shalom, shalom bimromav, bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru Amen.
Shabbat Shalom once again.
Shabbat.
I get to read the announcements. I'm Rabbi Rosenberg, representing the United Hebrew Board of Trustees. Tomorrow at United Hebrew, Shabbat Torah study will begin at 9 a.m., and it will be via Zoom only tomorrow. Our Shabbat morning service will be at 10:30 a.m. For the Torah study Zoom link, you can find that on our website, and you'll be able to live stream our Shabbat morning service from our website as well. At 12:30 p.m. will be our Musar. That also will be via Zoom, and you can find the link to register on our website. And at 6 p.m., we will usher out Shabbat with our next week now Havdalah via live stream. Upcoming events. Join us for 2 opportunities to celebrate the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Next Friday evening, January 14th at 6:30 p.m. via live stream will be our annual Mlk Shabbat Service and celebration. And I will join in conversation with Pastor Sheila Bowie-Sledge of North Park United Methodist Church and Pastor Gerald Freeman of Ecclesia of Christ Church. And we will be discussing Dr. King's dream, what he saw, what we see, our perspective. And on Sunday morning, we are all invited to join together via Zoom. This is January 16th at 10:30 a.m. We're going to join a Sunday morning service with Ecclesia of Christ Church and North Park United Methodist Church, and we will worship together as well as celebrate the legacy of Dr. King. And you can find that link on our website. And on Sunday, January 23rd at 9 a.m. will be Build Your Jewish Toolbox Life Cycle Part 2. And for additional information on other upcoming classes and programs, please visit our UH website. And of course, as always, we are so thankful for our UH tech team. And of course, we are thankful for David Cohen, who always makes the music sound great and makes us sound great as well. And when the building is open on Sundays, the gift shop is open from 9 to noon, or you can call and make an appointment to meet with Iris, and she will open the gift shop for you. And this is the first Friday evening of a new month, not just the new English month, but a new Hebrew month. And we are celebrating birthdays. So everyone at home who is celebrating a birthday in January, we ask you please to rise so that you can be blessed. And imagine us calling out all of your names because we see you and we are wishing you a happy birthday. And we do know that Maury Pascover is celebrating a birthday on January 13th, and that he'll be 78. Someone came in and slipped us a purple slip. And so we now bestow and offer this blessing upon all of you. Yehi darkechem mevorach, may your way be blessed.
Ya'er alechem or hachochma, may wisdom's light shine upon you.
Yiten lachem masechem shalom, and may your journey throughout life continue to bring you peace. And with that we say amen.
Amen.
And we say ad mea ve'esrim, may each of you live to be 120, just as Moses did. May it be so.
Amen.
And we now turn to page 586 as we rise for Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon hakol, la'tet gdula liotzer b'reishit, shelo asana kigoyei haratzot, velo samanu kemishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. Page 591. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
You may be seated. And if you are following along in the prayer book, we turn to page 593. The light of life is a finite flame. Like the Shabbat candles, life is kindled, it burns, it glows. It is radiant with warmth and beauty, but soon it fades Its substance is consumed, and it is no more. In light we see, in light we are seen. The flames dance and our life burns down and gutters. There is an end to the flames. We see no more and are no more seen. Yet we do not despair, for we are more than a memory slowly fading into the darkness. With our lives we give life. Something of us can never die. We move in the eternal cycle of darkness and death, of light and life. This Shabbat, the heartfelt condolences of our congregation go out to the families of Carrie Lynn Brown and Brian Lee Fitter. We are in the period of Shloshim for Rosalie Thelma Barnes, Martha A. Earhart, David Robert Geller, Dolores Grollman, Leonard Kornblum, Haley B. Kramer, Patricia Lynn Planets, Marion Rosenbaum, David Eli Steinberg, Carrick Tratt. This week, this Shabbat, we observe the yahrzeits and we lovingly remember Jacob Murray Albert, Carolyn Sue Altman, Jack M. Arbor, Nettie Balin, Joseph Barg, Geraldine S. Barnholtz, Nancy Jane Berger, Samuel Bing, Lillian Blumenfeld, Ethel Simon Bluestein, Sarah Brooks, Harry Cohen, Lena K. Cohen, Harriet Cohen, Rosanna Gacy Culp, Anne Lynn Citron, Gloria Stern Ellis, Libby Feigenbaum, Joseph C. Friedman, Jack B. Gentle, Lena Gidlowitz, Lottie Clarice Glickman, George Goldberg, Edna H. Goldenberg, Abe Goldstein, Cecilia Golliber, Samuel Gomberg, Rose B. Green, Charles S. Gross, Leah Hammer, Abe Handelman, Martha Honey, Harry Jasper, Dr. Ronald J. Kaplansky, Jacob Kotler, Ida Kramer, Max Kussmer, Mitchell Allen Lending, Alex Lepowich, Ida Levitt, Louis P. Malpe, Francine Merriam, Bernard Martin, Perry L. Melman, Roswell Messing Jr., Sylvia Moss, Helen Packman, Gertrude Trudy Paley, Kenneth I. Pollock, Sam Portney, Adeline Eichenberg Pozlowski, Samuel Potashnik, Jane F. Richter, Frida B. Roudman, Fanny M. Roven, Albert Safer, Bess Schneider, Morris Schneider, Sophie Schneider, Max Scholar, Ruth Siegel, Saul Sinkoff, Estelle Goodman Seitman, Herman Sokolik, Jeanette Sussman, Florence Weinschelbaum, Clara Evans Weissman, Louis J. Wenneker, Jeannie Jasper White, Rose Pastel Wolf, Jean A. Zemliak. Zichronam livracha, may each of their memories be for blessing. As we turn to page 598 and we rise for the recitation of the Mourner's Kaddish. Yit Gadal ve'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah, v'almad divrach Yerutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uvyomechon, uv'chayed dechol Beit Yisrael, v'agala uvizman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah mevorach leolam olmei almaya, yit barach ve'yishtabach ve'yitpa'ar ve'yitromam ve'yitnaseh, V'yit hadar, v'yit halev, v'yit halal, shemei dekudashar barichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiram be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru. Amen. And on this Shabbat of Parashat Bo, as the Torah begins our people's story of freedom, a blessing of freedom by Rabbi Cheryl Lewart. May you come into the recesses and deep places of your heart to soften and free yourself from oppression. May you find the courage to face your inner Pharaoh, the heaviness you carry around, and know you will find your way to freedom. May you soften and float out from under the burdens that weigh you down. May the narrow straits of Egypt, Mitzrayim, become the birth canal of your new free self. Awaken to your own power to turn fear into love, aware that the Holy One sustains and supports you. And as we continue to move through these days of COVID, may we soon come to know that place of freedom, even if it means that we figure out how we live with this. May we move out of those narrow straits of Mitzrayim and come back to life and to living again, as we join together, ending with a prayer for peace.
Ose shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru